We're on.
Good morning. We are going to start our year 17 budget discussion. Finish that off today, but first let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have the master schedule, so we can start a discussion on that. Can somebody remind me why we're doing this?
This is a staffing schedule that we're looking at. And what the staffing schedule does is to indicate each teacher, the courses that they teach, and the number of students within each of those courses.
Oh.
Back when you discussed the elementary school, Nathan had asked for a staffing sheet of the elementary, so we continued with the request came from the elementary, the junior, senior high school, and for special education. So,
Christine, can you help me, can you walk through this a little bit, just so I know what, so we're at the top on page 1, it's English.
Yep,
Red day, I know the difference between red and black days.
it's a block scheduling.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so each A, B, C, and D is one class block?
Yep.
Okay.
And then the number that's represented there is the number of students in the class.
I don't understand red and black.
Red day, and you can help me, I don't know which one goes through. It alternates. There's a red day and there's a black day. So some classes will be twice a week, sometimes they're 3 times a week. So it depends if it's a red or black. So that's how
So
the
we
schedule.
changed everything to block scheduling. The kids are now in class for 85 minutes, so they actually get 85 minutes of learning. They get to do class time, and then they get to do work time, and they've noticed the increase in grades, and people just, comprehension is higher.
What do you mean they work things?
So I'm gonna do my lecture. It's basically like college. You do your lecture, and then you do the work right there, so that everybody understands it. And what you don't understand, the teacher has time to work with you.
I got it, okay.
Yeah, really, I love it.
Is that unique?
Block scheduling?
I
No.
think it's
No.
it's new to us in the past 4 or 5 years.
A lot of the high schools in the area.
I think it's, yeah, about 4 or 5, because it was right before I came here, I think the year before.
Yeah.
So 11, 12 school year, I think you might have
And that's right
implemented.
when my oldest started in high school. I mean, I just saw a difference immediately.
So staying up on the top of the page, under Caswell, red B, it says 12, L5, 7. What are those numbers? I mean, one of them is this number of students.
7.
Okay,
L5 is the level.
okay.
12th grade.
12, got it. Okay.
Look, I don't even have to answer, you guys know it.
And I love, if you look at all the AP courses, you can see how many people we have. This is my favorite thing. But because anybody can take an advanced placement course, which most colleges will take those as college credits if you get a certain score. So that's a really high amount of people for our size.
And it's nice to see the variety of class offerings that we have available, the different levels.
Yep.
It's a good, taking it into the languages and the chemistry, the sciences, everything.
So, generally, as you look through the report, it looks like there are 14, 15, 16 kids on average per class.
Now, this is the high school.
This is the high school. Then you go down to something like reading, and does that mean there's 1 kid in the class and 2 kids in the class?
It's probably a special
This is the reading extra.
extra help. So it might
Reading
be a
special. This is the
one-on-one.
reading specialist.
So it's a special need?
Yes.
I gotcha, okay. So those are really irrelevant. Those are just, yeah.
Well, not if it was yours, but.
No,
I
no,
get what
no,
you're
no,
saying.
I know what you mean.
I mean the
Yeah.
ratio, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when you go down to grade 8 or grade 7, loads look very similar.
I think you can see subtle changes between the 6th and the 7th and the 8th based upon the number of kids that are in
Yeah.
those groups.
Yeah.
That Nate was talking about the other day.
Grade 6, that's one of the larger classes. That's pushing 25.
And if you go into those classrooms with 25, you'd see the difference.
And what's the recommended, or what's our standard?
It's the class size.
No,
I mean,
what
the
it-
classroom size.
Yeah,
So
but what do we like to see in a class?
20 to 23 at the most. Just because of the classroom, I'm assuming, again, Chris could answer that for us Thursday if that. But if I remember through all this talk, we like to keep our classes between 20 and 25.
It looks like that's about where they are.
So the only point I'd make about the block schedule is that this is a teacher schedule for the students. The students, instead of having 7 or 8 period day, each day is only a 4 period day for longer blocks of time. They can continue to take, in our schedule, a 4 by 8 block. They can take 6 or 7 or 8 classes even, but they would only have half of those either day. So from the student's point of view, instead of going to 7 or 8 classes to have 5 or 6 preps for that day, they get to have only 4
Wow.
maximum, so that, they only have to prepare for 4 classes on the day. And I think that advantages them sometimes. They have to keep track of a lot.
Right.
But, if every kid, when I was in high school, if you had 7 classes and every teacher gave you homework for the night, it wasn't pleasant, it wasn't the best of nights,
No.
because you had to
And I
face
think
them
to
all.
Elizabeth's point also, that is the way that college is.
Yes, it is.
So it's a good pre
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Like 3 classes or 4 classes would be top all you would have in college in a day.
Exactly.
Generally.
I mean, isn't it easier on the staff, too?
Yeah, oh, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then here's my final little, let's call it a dig because it's early in the morning. But also it helps because the lockers aren't large enough to hold all their books and all their things. So this way, when it's a red day, all their black things are at home. Black day, all their red things are at home. And for our life, it makes it easier. And they don't have 20 pounds of books in their backpacks.
I might have mentioned this during our facilities searches, but it seems like the locker is going by the way of the dodo bird. It's like kids, at least at the schools we surround, they don't even use them.
They don't
anymore.
even use them
They
anymore.
carry everything.
Yeah, our kids do.
Yeah.
Do they? Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing
Well,
I
the
would
middle
say,
schoolers do.
the only thing I would say about backpacks, I think that's going to grab attention as we move forward. What the students can have in
Safety-wise.
backpacks
Yep.
from a safety point of view. They're talking about, opaque or clear
See-through.
package so you can see into the backpack. And
Inner cities have the clear backpacks right now.
And if we get to electronic textbooks, the only thing they would need would be,
a tablet.
Yeah.
What was the school that we visited right up the road?
That was Winnicott.
Winnicott has no lockers in the
None?
entire. None, 0. They're gone. The hallways are wide open.
I was gonna say, that would free up our hallways.
Yeah.
And the superintendent or principal that we spoke with just said they're not used anymore, at all. So they took them out.
I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's, why have a kid carry these great big textbooks, which now cost $250, or, I'm hearing that kids are dropping $1,000 to buy their textbooks for a semester of classes
Where?
at college.
Oh, in college.
In college,
Not
and,
I
us.
thought you meant.
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I think they're gonna have search capabilities on electronic textbooks, they're gonna it's gonna change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Library, remember the index? Non-existent, right?
They won't know what the Dewey Decimal System is.
Making us learn.
No, you won't.
No, you
Card
won't.
catalogs,
That's card catalog.
microfiche.
Oh, microfiche.
Okay.
I always broke that machine.
So are there any more questions about this? And if you do, we can just save it for Chris on Thursday, too.
That's good.
It's a good document to have.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to be on there? We're not on.
We were.
We're not anymore.
Oh,
Now
yes,
we are.
Okay, so then what would we like to talk about next?
You tell me. So what I provided you today as handouts is you have a sheet that looks like this. Okay, so this is the adjustment sheet rather than reprinting the budget packet itself because there could be some changes. So I'll just go over them briefly with you. So I mentioned on Thursdays, we did get our rates for health insurance, so you can see the adjustments that I've made there. So that was a $108,000 increase,
So it's, I think we said it was 10%. It's
10.9, yep,
It's,
And I
looks
had-
like it's 10.9.
10.9. And we had in the budget 5. So you can see the adjustment made for that. Per the request of the board, we increased the curriculum director salary.
Yeah.
So I made that adjustment, and whether you do a title change, that's fine.
Yep.
To increase to support the 260-day contract for that position. We have a deduct for the contracted services because that will be funded through a warrant article per our last discussion on Thursday. An increase of $50,000 for a facilities manager. Excuse me. And moving down to the high school, we have SST tuition rates. We've seen a decrease in the tuition rate, so you can see that adjustment. My oversight, I mistransposed a number in the budget for ESOL paras. Last year, we had to increase the position from a 5-hour position to a 7-hour position. So it's a year-round position now, so I made that adjustment. And yesterday, I received a request from Chris Andruski, the high school principal, to see if the board would support an $8,000 purchase for ebooks. So that's in there. So if the board accepted all adjustments, then you can see the new proposal would be $16 million and change, which would still give us a net increase of almost 0.5%.
Can we do the ebooks through the trust fund?
You can. And so I brought another sheet saying if we went that route, then I'll pass this one around. Because we do have the option of, I think depending on how this year lays out, I think we have an opportunity to maybe use the end of the year fund balance to do it. If we have something remaining at the end of the year, which I believe that we will. We also have the trust fund we can use. I wasn't able to have an in-depth conversation with Chris because he had the webinar yesterday. The administrators really were intrigued by it and wanted to do this. However, some of the questions I have to go back to the administrative team is and say, okay, if we're buying ebooks, then I'm assuming there's going to be a decrease in the textbook line. So what's the offset?
Right.
So, but that's not a conversation that we had, but I just wanted to put this out there that this is the worst case scenario. And we can fine tweak that this week between now and our next meeting on
I'd love to know
Thursday, so.
What the ebooks, who would have the ebooks?
Okay, hold on, let me just,
And how many does 8,000 buy?
yeah, and whether or not, it's, because some of the questions I have, I'm not that familiar with ebooks, I know. So how many? Thank you, Nathan.
Morning.
So how many ebooks and to whom they will be distributed to?
Yeah. Or will it be like a cart thing again?
No. It won't be a cart, I don't think.
I think.
We're talking about
I think
ebooks,
that's a-
Nathan, just to
that's-
bring you up?
That's a
Ebooks or
good
Chromebooks?
question.
Ebooks.
That's a good question.
Ebooks are
It's like a
a
soft,
a
soft.
subscription. You
Yeah.
read your book you read the book
So
on an
like
iPad
personal-
or a reader or.
But I think it's a license that you pay for so many students, right? Like you buy 200 licenses.
Well, it depends. I mean, if this is
See,
the
and that's
ones
what I
we-
don't
If
know.
this is Cengage and the deal that we all worked on together, that's a bunch of schools, it's 500 books or 600 books, titles, and you're entitled to 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 concurrent licenses of each. so that instead of there being one paper book in the library, 4 kids at once or 5 kids at once can all license it onto their Nook, Kindle, iPad, laptop, or whatever they're reading on.
Yeah.
Or then what we have, so that would, the electronics that we have in school, they
Right.
would be
Yeah,
using
They'd
those.
be
yep,
using those.
exactly,
Personal devices.
yeah. But I
A
just
lot
don't
of
know
the
how many
libraries are-
licenses. I just don't know how this is set up. So Nathan, what I was saying is Chris had a webinar yesterday with the administrative team, and they were intrigued by it, so they want to implement, and so there's a request for $8,000 as on here as the adjustment for that, but I said that we still kind of need to vet it out a little bit, because I don't have all the questions and answers for you about,
So $8,000 to launch this plan, is this in the library, or is this?
those are the questions that I don't have the answers to.
I guess part of, normally the genesis for doing something like this is to replace or to repurpose the dollars that you're spending on,
That's what I said previously.
Those are the questions.
rather than adding to the budget. The idea is instead of buying paper, I'm buying licenses, or I'm not buying textbooks, I'm buying, so.
Yep. We said the same thing.
Seems like
You
you
just-
just, seems like you don't have to add the money, you can just, you can
Right.
just
Yeah.
move to that model instead if
Yeah.
you need to, so.
But remember, just keep in mind, this, I mean, they just finished it at 3 o'clock yesterday. And so, so we crossed paths, and so this was just because, this happened fast. So I just wanted to get it out there to say, this is a conversation that we're gonna have, and
This isn't a budget question, but what does that mean for the future of a library within a school?
Big time question.
Yeah.
It is.
I know our participation at the town library has increased over the years. I can't tell you why, but I think people go to.
I can.
Oh,
They fixed it. They've added, there's a Friends of the Library committee now,
oh,
and
okay,
it's a beautiful place to go.
yeah.
We saw a lot of learning centers, they call them now, Al. There are some books, but there was a more of a combined use, community use, those learning
take
centers.
one of these and
had-
pass that
had,
around so we can all talk about that.
They had monitors or computers or docking stations, and the kids used that more, but also the community, they had a lot of, had a thing all scheduled up, especially in
One has the
Lebanon,
ebooks
in their
on.
brand-new school.
This one is the ebook.
So the one that we just looked at had the ebooks on there for the 8,000, and the one that's being passed around now for the adjustment does not. So you can see if it were to be something that we could absorb.
Christine, the percent increase is a minus. Is that right?
Yeah.
How can it be if we added this stuff?
How can it be? Because we added this stuff? Because we originally started, the budget was down 192,000 from the prior.
Without
Without the warrant article for the
Without-
teachers,
teacher's contract?
which represents, yes.
Yeah.
So when said and done, you're gonna have an overall
I think
increase.
I think the minus 51 is against last year's budget.
It is.
And the 109 is the increase since the budget you saw last week because of the health insurance and other increases.
So what I propose at the top of the sheet, Al, it says the initial budget, which I presented to the board, was
Yep.
15,952,000. So now with these adjustments, it's gonna increase until the 16. But
Okay,
this
but
is
still-
compared,
But
But
it's
the
still,
missing-
it's still negative 51, half a percent from
Yes.
last year's budget.
in last year's proposed budget, correct?
Without salary increases?
Without salary increases.
So,
Without warrant articles, which,
Without-
and salary increases would be in there with warrant articles.
Am I missing something, Nate?
Oh, I was just gonna say, so the relevant number that it might help is, we've got the initial proposed budget for next year.
Yep.
We have the adjustments made to the proposal.
yeah.
But that percentage increase is actually what the $16 million now proposed is by way of comparison to the previous year, not to other proposals.
Correct.
So that's the
Previous
number.
year budget, not actual.
Right,
Right.
budget, yeah.
Right, because what I did, Nate, instead of sending this packet out, this 56 or.
With only 7 or 8 changes.
With only 7 or 8 changes, what I do is I do this first, after today's conversation for Thursday, then I'll revise all of this and submit this. And then we'll prove
That
that.
makes good sense, yeah.
Yeah, and then the next step after we typically have done this, then we will then talk about default, we'll talk about the food service, and we'll talk about the other piece, which is grants, which makes up the total gross appropriations. Yep.
Good morning, Nathan.
So the other thing that
I'm glad
so
you're up
your
and
other
about.
handouts that you have in front of you are the, Chris Andruski brought up the proposed athletic salaries that you all got an email. So what I did was I gave you just some backup information because I just want to make sure that it's clear that we have a step and track based on years of experience, so it's not just a flat $1,600. It depends on your experience for coaching soccer or basketball or baseball. So depending if you have 1 year of experience to 10 years experience, that's how you're placed. Similar to what step and tracks for teachers and for pairs are. They just move across based on that level of experience. So I supplied you with Appendix C, because that, and you can find this Appendix C in your classified handbook. So I just made a copy so you could use it as a reference. And then what I did was I gave you 2 spreadsheets for the 14-15, and this is actually what we paid out in terms of the experience that we have with our coaches and what the current 15-16 is as of right now. So you can kind of just do an analysis there in terms of what we're actually paying. I do have to speak with the administrators because they reference a step 12. There's some people that are being paid off of the step and track, and I don't know how they're deriving that number. But you can at least see that, there was an example that we're paying $1,600 for our soccer versus, $4,000. But that it's contingent upon how many years experience they have in our district here. And that's how we typically have done it. There's a proposed salary sheet that I gave you, which was given to me by Chris. And so you can kind of see what he's using is the salary of the prior year, base salary from the prior year. So that's your step 1B of the teacher's contract. Okay, so this one, the 32,735 represents the 14-15 school year. And then the percentage of that base is how they derived at what the stipend for a coach would be. So that's what he's proposing. Now, the other,
Christine, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just, there's different percentages.
yep,
How were those arrived at?
I can't speak to that,
Okay.
Well, let me-
unfortunately. I can,
So there's a lengthy spreadsheet that goes with this, and what they did was they pulled districts in the region, and they took what the coaches are making in those districts, compared those stipends to the base salary on the teacher schedule for each of those districts to come up with a percentage.
Yep.
And then they averaged the percentages over all those districts, and that's what you see here. So it was that for varsity soccer, if they consider how in the region, the varsity soccer coaches' stipends compared to their own payroll schedule, not their own salary, but the beginning of the salary for each of their communities, they were on average 10% of the base. And so they proposed then that varsity soccer should be, from a market perspective, 10% of the base in your home district. You'd have to go back and look. I mean, it seemed like they did a pretty fair regional comparison. Certainly, the communities that, you could argue that the communities are more affluent or less affluent. You could argue that that some of the teams are larger or smaller, maybe, not necessarily at a varsity level, because your teams are all going to be essentially the same size, same number of games, so on and so forth. So I think that was part of the premise.
They compared 10 different towns.
Yep, they had 10.
yep.
I
Yeah,
don't
you all
remember.
got
I
that in
couldn't
your email?
I couldn't name them all, but they were all in that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And
You
just
want-
looking through this, I mean, it seems like that worked into that number through all that collective data is, the level of, I guess, commitment, seems to be reflected in the percentages. For instance, like varsity basketball is a big, time commitment. That's one of the higher ones.
And soccer.
Soccer.
So it was compared to Oyster
So it
River.
has some reason to it.
Yeah. The towns in the comparison were Oyster River, Sanborn, Dover, Winnicott, Goffstown, John Stark, and maybe some others, but mine cut off.
Manchester, Lebanon,
Manchester.
Merrimack Valley.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed that people are being paid differently than is on the schedule. And I think we should look into why that's
Oh,
the
you mean the
case.
12-step?
No, well, Christine said some people are being paid over the schedule. That is unacceptable.
Well, you have to find out the reasons why, right?
It's
Find out the reason.
unacceptable for somebody to pay over the schedule, because that's what the schedule means. And if the schedule is a problem, we ought to fix it. The other comment I would make, and you guys know more about this than I do, but if you have Joe Smith from Kensington coaching, and there is a coach from Kensington that's coaching here, how do we do their years of experience?
Oh, I don't think he coaches here anymore.
Yes, he does.
Which one?
Mike? Mike Picard?
I don't know.
So I'm more worried about the Mike's comment is it looks fair. I think that's, I can't tell, but if it looks fair, it looks fair. But I don't like the opportunity for casual decisions to be made, because that creates trouble for us.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, somebody's coming and they're saying, wait a minute,
Who makes the decision?
there shouldn't be decision-making on years of service when it comes to crediting outside people. I just don't think it's that equal pay.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so I'd like to see personally, I'd like to see a stipend that if you're in JV soccer, you get paid
Get this.
$4,000. And take all this decision-making out of it. It seems to create favoritism potentially, and so.
So that would be a good question to find out how they go about that, how the decisions are made.
So two quick
That way we
comments.
can understand it, right?
Right.
Well, again,
You don't care.
no, my conclusion is the fella coming from Kensington or wherever they come from, in these steps, if you're doing the job, you're doing the job. Unless you want to have an assistant in full-time or something, but.
So this would be a question then. Does it matter if the year before they made, do we reward, if the kids make championships, they make states, is that why they get a step up? That's the question I would have. How do you come about this number? And then you want to say, doesn't matter.
Right.
So this proposal, two comments. One is, I would just ask that, if you were to approve something like this, that you would just look at one number, and that's the junior high basketball, because that would actually be a pay cut, that 6%. We're currently paying somebody over $2,000 for that. So we just need to make sure that it's aligning with what we're paying, for one, which is why I gave you some of the backup from prior year and what we're paying right now this year. But the overall dollars that this proposal is talking about is about, it's about $10,700. So there is some room in the budget, because we haven't been fully utilizing all of the coaches' stipends, which was about $5,000. So if this was something that you wanted to potentially,
Is that position you talked about is appropriately on the schedule, or is that one of the
Well,
exceptions?
we don't have that information, Al, here in this thing. Christine's given us a schedule.
no, but I gave him the actuals. I'm looking at, this is the actuals
Yeah.
link. So when I look at that person is one of the ones that I've questioned, because it's on a step 12 right now.
Of which step 12
Doesn't exist.
That's right. It's all here. You're right, Christine, I'm sorry.
Yep. I gave you, like I said, 15, 16, and 14, 15 are both there for what we have. And these are actuals that we've paid, just so.
Yeah, so, part of what I think I want to propose to the board is, I don't think that with 15 minutes, listen, it doesn't have to be anything we even concern ourselves with. We can delegate it to administration, ask them for more work, more. You don't have to validate, pass muster on, vote, or anything on this mechanism. All we have to do right now is figure out how much money we want to put in the budget for this purpose. Here's my concern. Concern might be the wrong word. between the junior high and the senior high, we've got $49,000 and 49,092 budgeted. We have spent 43.3 last year, 40,003 the previous year, which means there are some coaching positions that exist, but only maybe. There may be other coaching positions that are expected to be paid, but they aren't. The number isn't pegged to, it doesn't look like the number is pegged to even a reasonable forecast of who we think we're going to have in coaching positions next year. It's just a number. And yet, we've had circumstances where we've had money in this line and a number and needs to be addressed, and we haven't been able to. And that's not necessarily for lack of money. Maybe it was for lack of time, for lack of opportunity, or what have you. But I guess what I'm concerned with is that we've named a couple of things. As I look down through the actuals, I got a number of payments being made that don't match anything on the scale. They're off the scale, they're even within the scale, but they don't match. And I'm not sure how we got to that, and I think we need to explore that. I have some hesitation. Certainly the justification of why we might set rates being driven by the teacher calendar or the teacher schedule is one thing, but this is not being negotiated at the table as a part of the collective bargaining agreement, and so I want to make sure we're really careful before we connect this to the collective bargaining, because this proposal would suggest that as the teacher base salary grows every year,
Right.
so do the coaching stipends, which you could tie it to the scale, you could tie it to a consumer price index or something like that. You could do anything you want for inflationary benefit, but this isn't part of the collective bargaining agreement. It's not a union notion. It's simply a practice or policy we want to put in place, and I think we really need to, consider all of that. So part of what I'm looking for is how much more money are they proposing or suggesting that we should put in? Because some of the people getting stipends now would get less money according to this. Not
About
just one,
10,000.
but a lot of them. I mean, if we look back, if I look back at your last year actuals, everybody who went to step 12, other than maybe the basketball coach, isn't going to get the same amount of money. I don't think that's really their intent. So my sense greater is that somebody's thinking this will be step one on a scale, and then they'll have a new scale that will grow it from there. And now we're back to, we got to have more conversation about what actually goes into practice. So can you give us any sense of what kind of number they're proposing ought to be in a budget? No.
An increase?
Yeah.
This would be 10,000.
Yeah, but I think Nathan also made a statement that
So-
there's a difference between how much additional they need, but the budget number,
Like you're saying 10,000.
So the proposal is 10, and we have an addition, I just called it
6.
5, just
5.
because we didn't fund JV basketball.
Okay.
Okay, so I was just leaving a little wiggle room, just in case we fund it with the increase in numbers.
But I
So I was
just
saying,
thought-
there's a difference about $5,000 if you were to implement this, that you would have to add to the budget to make something like this happen.
So
But
what are the rates going to be paid to the positions that are included in the budget right now that aren't being paid for right now that add up to the 5,000 or 6,000 of extra budget?
I don't have that
There
because I
aren't
don't know who they are. So when you're on a step and track, I can only assume from prior what that coach is. And we typically, and I just think that this is something that we just need to vet a little bit more, because I personally have a hard time with the percentages and how they're driven, because I want to make sure that every coach is being treated fairly, and what the percentage represents, I can't speak to it, and because I can't speak to it, I'm not comfortable with it. But I also think that you need to vet the percentages, what Nathan said about the salary, but also about, we currently have time. We don't have a shortage of coaches. We have excellent coaches. It's just like our teachers, they're not the highest paid in the region. Our coaches are not the highest paid in the region. They're great coaches, great teachers, and they're here for other reasons. And so we just need to look at this, but I'm not sure it needs to be an instant reaction.
So it seems like there are three issues. We got to, as Nate said, come up with a valid number for this budget. Second of all, I guess to Al's point of fairness, we need to make sure we have a, mechanism that we're paying people squarely and appropriately. But thirdly, we don't want to turn this into the tax code
Right.
You know, with these,
Right.
you know, we need a mechanism to make it simple.
Yeah.
But a mechanism that's,
But
I guess, market-based.
Still appropriate, right.
And to Nate's point, I mean, you gotta, maybe it's easy to peg it to that, you know, step one salary, but I think Al mentioned this the other night, I don't see the logical connection. I don't know, maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, maybe there is logic to it, but
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing, just for what it's worth. Part of the reason why I said that, I should have been, you know, full disclosure. I just did an analysis of 159 school districts in the state. They're starting B1 and M1s. I did this because somewhere else we're in the top 10 or 12. In Newmarket, we're 124th out of 159.
of
Our
what?
base salary.
Of what?
159 school districts with collective bargaining agreements in New Hampshire, our starting Bachelor Step 1 teacher salary is 124th out of 159. I don't want to immediately jump to having our coaches be driven by that number, because I think they're already being paid or being compensated at a rate that's more competitive than that. And so this might be rolling them back unnecessarily and unintentionally. And so that's not necessarily the number that we need to pick, although it might be. We might decide that's the right metric, but I think that this was this was a jump, because if you're Oyster River and your base salary is 20th in the state, it's a great number to jump to. But if it's not necessarily a competitive number in the first place, then, you know.
This kind of goes to Al's point about, you know, if there's some are being paid off schedule, they might be, you know, they might, if we go to a more logical system, there might be some.
And I think it goes
Both ways.
to a much larger point. We're having a discussion right now about coaches.
Right.
And we're not having this discussion about secretarial staff or custodial staff and I think, again, I would just say, I think this is so overly complicated. But we ought to just have a column that says, if you're a boys soccer varsity coach, the stipend is $2,200. And I don't get all this. It just seems way overcomplicated.
And if after a year or two, the board says, well, you know, Market, we ought to
Right.
tick that up by 3%, then we bang it.
Sure.
And we just do, yeah, I think that's,
Yeah.
and I think that may have been where it was intended, but then over time, right, you get this 10 steps and,
Whoever did this has too much time on their hands.
right?
What, but also, remember, if you have a good coach and you want to keep that coach, like if that coach is good with parents, which is key, that coach is good with the kids, how do we, just like the teachers, how do we keep them? And yes, everybody loves our community, but at some point, after you've dealt with parents, you, you don't want to stay. You're going to leave. And then we have to hire somebody else.
Yeah.
It's just, so that, you have to remember that there's a reason why, I'm sure that we'll learn, there's a reason why we have to increase it.
I don't,
You're equating performance with time and job. I don't. I equate performance to performance. I don't know. It's a much deeper discussion, but it's unfortunate that we have 252 employees that are paid based on how long they've been there, not what kind of job they're doing.
And that's it. And even in just having that much conversation, we are not the only district having the conversation,
Yeah.
but it's an uphill,
Yeah.
it's an uphill swing, you know, to have that. But I think it's something it's hard because within the district, within that 250 somewhat people you're talking about, there are people who certainly would, I think, agree that they feel like for all that they contribute and the great performance they give and the superlative and even unexpected or, you know, voluntary additional effort they put in, that there ought to be some mechanism to be compensated for that.
And I think the one thing the teachers would say, did I interrupt you?
No, go ahead.
Teachers would say they're number 9, and I think that's what we're going to hear. Our district's number 9 in the seacoast, whatever that
state.
was, in the state, and it was the teachers that got you there. So if you want a reward for performance, that would be their argument too, right?
Yep.
So go back to point number 1,
Point number
Michael
one.
made, which is we need a number. And so I guess I'd look at the board and say, the number right now between the two, unless I'm wrong, and the number's 10,000 at the junior, senior high, and 39,092 at the high school, for a combined 49,092. Last year, we paid 43,3, so there's
That's what we're projecting we're gonna pay this year.
15, 16. Oh, sorry, that's 15, 16.
And then we paid 40 last year.
40 last year,
So
43
we still had
this year.
9,000.
But if you want to chase anything like this with the adjustments, we would need more dollars. The number somebody's talking about is 10. So I asked the board, I'd leave the number. I'd leave the number, do the homework, figure it out. If we go over by a couple, $2,000 or $3,000, $4,000, I mean, we got 5 in there now, they say they need 10.
Yeah.
If we go 5 over, we go 5 over.
I think that's good.
And we ought to use this year to make a plan and figure it out. So when we sit for the next budget session, we'll look at this and it'll be a much cleaner reality. How's that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That's why I didn't make an adjustment.
That's good. Don't make adjustments
I
on that.
didn't.
All right, so that's the coaches thing.
So what I'm hearing is that you want us to kind of do a little bit more research and bring to the board a proposal.
I would think, bring to the board a proposal that's, like I meant, I was being funny, but like, to Al's point too, about the tax cut, I don't wanna, you don't wanna have to, run spreadsheets just to figure out what, and maybe a policy of revisiting it every other year, a market-based review.
And listen, I think Al said simple. One of the things I've heard multiple times is, every time we talk about steps, that there is a claim made that there's a difference between the first-year person and the veteran person. And for me, I say, okay, I'll grant you there probably is a difference. If not a difference in their capacity to do that job, there may be a difference in their capacity or their ability to work within our system, our culture, et cetera. And so if there is something to be gained in some experience. But I think part of what has to be decided in all of that is if the first year you're still learning and have you by the second year learned enough to say that you're now a master, or is it the third or the fourth or the fifth? In this case, I might imagine 3 steps, beginner, intermediate, and master. Maybe 2 steps, maybe there's no, but I can imagine that there's an argument to be made that the coach who just walked in, who's never been in Newmarket, got no sense of how we do this, who our kids or our parents, isn't nearly as capable in all realm or in all aspects of the job as the person who's been here 20 years or even 10 years. And so if you have to address that in the proposal you bring back and the thoughts that you put together, do so, but try to come with some logic as to why there's more than one number, so that can be part of our discussion. Okay?
And I think Chris has already done the homework.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done it already.
The market.
He did a market survey. So pick your number out of that, what percent of market value, what percent of the market do I want to be? I want to be in the 70th percentile or the 80th percentile.
Right.
Put those numbers down. I mean, he's done a great job on getting us there.
And I know Jamie Hayes, the AD, the athletic director, had a lot to do with that too, so, just so that folks can be appreciated for, again, the extra work they're doing, we appreciate that. Okay, go back to, you've been through all of these initial budget adjustments.
Yep.
We set aside the ebook thing. We've talked about now the extracurriculars. You want to talk about what would be next? You want to talk about the schedule?
We kind of went over that, but maybe.
Did you? Oh,
Yeah.
good, okay, sorry, I was late.
That's
So
okay, nope.
Anything arise out of that news fit to print? Anything for,
We just talked
Anything
about.
for the budget?
The size of the classes and,
for what it's worth, they're bigger now than they were when I saw this last.
yeah.
Because some of the things that popped out at me that I was talking to Chris about here when we were here Thursday night aren't as dramatic, I guess. I don't see some of the teeny tiny rooms that I was seeing then in some of these higher level language or higher level core subjects, which I think is indicative of the fact that, the 40, 50 classes have moved out, now we're into the 60s and 70s coming, so, okay.
Yeah, because the AP courses used to have 4 or 5 kids in them.
Well, that's right, and now they're,
That's how I get excited.
Do we
when I
want
see-
something Thursday on the e-books?
no.
I thought,
Oh, do you? Sorry.
I thought there were a few questions remaining unanswered.
The word before you got
Yeah,
it.
okay, good.
And I didn't know if you want me to try to bring some more information or have somebody come and speak to that for a couple minutes, or can that wait?
I think Chris is going to be here, isn't he?
Well, the
Just
people are
getting-
going to be here,
yeah.
yes. Okay, well,
My quick no was because I'm hoping to give her enough data so she has a finished number after today, and
Okay.
we're not adding 8 grand on Thursday, but we can. I mean, I think
We also can use the.
we can do it whatever.
Trust fund.
The trust fund.
Right, okay. So, back to the budget then?
Yes.
To me, it's a software.
I thought I'd just start at the beginning of the budget detail and walk through very quickly one more time to give us all a chance to peekaboo at things that we think might deserve more consideration. And so if I do that, I'm thinking page 10. Take it in the same order that we took it over the last couple of weeks. Starting page 10, then in regular education at the elementary school. Some data has been shared with us about those positions. One of my challenges, just so you know, one of mine was, I was just trying to figure out who 34.3 teachers were, not who the names, but if I know that I have five classrooms at each grade level,
That's what we need to.
1 through 5, that's 25. If I have 4 kindergartners, that's 29.
Who said that?
If I have art, PE, music, and computer, I'm up to 33. Who's the 1.3 left?
Is
I
that
asked him for
the specials for the kindergarten?
Because that's what he
There might be a
wants.
fractional there, there might
Yep.
be the fractional, and that's, so that was when I asked questions the last time, and I still haven't figured out exactly what the makeup is, but I'm close enough now so I don't, if someone said, well, you got, 5 or 6 extra people walking around, I would say, no, not based on the data that I've seen, so.
And I think we had talked last time about trying to categorize the FTEs in terms of teaching staff
Yeah.
versus non-teaching
Non-teaching.
staff. Because, again, I think that'll tell us something. If the teaching staff has diminished greatly over the past 3 or 4 years, but the numbers stayed constant, that's something we should be talking about.
Where are those? Where is that? What are the non-teaching units that have grown and why?
Exactly.
In what area and to what benefit, and how does that support learning as opposed to having a teaching unit in the budget? So-
Exactly right.
Or in the
Yeah.
building, I should say. Okay. So down through this, there's salaries first. This is all, actually, remember, it's functional, so this 1,100 is regular ed. One of my questions was, I think I asked it, I don't know if I ever asked it, wellness. Are we upticking the wellness role in terms of total number of hours?
No, so what happens with that, it's a flat 15,000 throughout the budget. So we figure out what her salary is and the FICA, and then whatever's left over then gets moved to the supplies. So it never changes except for she changes because she's on the step and track of the classified. So the salaries will go up, but then that means less in supplies and activities.
Okay. So if she had a real need for more stuff, she'd have to make that judgment call and take less salary?
Pretty much, because she can't exceed the 15,000, but we haven't exceeded the 15,000 yet. We
Okay.
have money left over every year because she does a lot of, she gets grants and other things as well, so.
So I guess I would
We're
just
not in
say,
that situation.
good that we're not,
So-
we're not in a bad position on that one, that's good. I guess all I would say is if there was some major initiative that we thought spoke dramatically to the wellness of our students and our staff, and it was a one-time reality, I hope that would come forward rather than.
It would come forward, and we would
rather than
also,
her going as a volunteer for a year to try to
and we
make it
also
happen.
use some of the FSA funds that we get. So there's other means to do that, but we have not had that project that's come forth that has put us in that situation.
As you go through that budget then, page 10, 11, 12. If I look at advisor salaries, on page 12, 14, 10, 113, we see the actual went beyond in the prior year. Actually, the last couple of prior years, the actual has been beyond what had been budgeted. And so we're chasing to keep up. My sense is that that's because we've identified new programs that we can run, new activities that benefit the kids? After-school stuff? What do you know?
No, so what I know about that is there's some questions in regards to what's an advisor's salary sometimes in terms of what's a stipend for a coach. So we typically, for that, we found out that one of the stipends that we believe should have been under the coach's stipend was charged to an advisor's salary. Because it's not an athletic, but it's like a jump rope.
So if I looked at the line below, I see that there's
So,
lots of money left over because we're charging it to one line as opposed to the other?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything, anybody else? I don't want to waste our time if you guys have already, if you're comfortable with 13. Continuing now through the related services, guidance, speech, occupational therapy. In each section, there's a salary generally. And then there are supplies and some contracted services that go with. We've made the adjustment of the librarian position on page 14 at the top.
Yeah, real quickly,
Yeah,
Kristen,
please.
you mentioned that, the difference there is the two full-time librarians and no paraprofessionals?
Correct.
Is that it? Is that basically a wash? Is that even? or-
It's very close to a wash, yep.
All right.
Yep.
And what's the substance behind that reasoning? I mean, in terms of going that route? You may have explained it, I can't remember. Doing the full-time librarians versus paraprofessionals.
Well, I think academically, it supports our students because we had a full-time librarian that had to, leave half day to go to the other building. And so we were really relying on the paraprofessionals in the library to keep up with, the students that were in there, the VLACs, the virtual academy, some of the other things. So it was really about, and they also do some teaching at the elementary. And so it was really about trying to get the best bang for our buck and having, a teacher who was going to be well-rounded in all aspects to be in there full-time all day
Okay.
to offer some additional. And Mike, if you want to.
Alls I would say is we had a full-time paraprofessional in each library, and we had a full-time librarian splitting their time between the high school and the elementary school, which meant that there wasn't a certified person in there, and if you had to go to the library during a period of time when you had only the paraprofessional, you might not have been getting the same support. And I think by having the full-time person who's certified, you have that full-time support in the library.
Seems to make sense.
Hold on, I was just reading. Okay, 15 then? $16 custodial.
Yeah, on custodial, the difference there is 10,000, a little over 10,000. And again, I'm sorry, Christine, if you already explained this and I just didn't listen, but
Let me just make sure before I speak again. But I believe that's just the changes in staff. We did increase the custodian 1 hour due to when we added the modulars. So we increased 1 hour a day for that, and then the rest of it is just strictly their step and track.
okay.
Okay, so here's one of the ways I chase that down, and I'm just to help Christine out or to help myself out. We approved a budget in 14-15, which was about 137. We overspent that number because of changes that we made. But long before we knew that actual of 140,000, we budgeted from the 136 to the 138. So now, my assumption is if we look at this year's actuals, we're gonna blow past 138, because we were already at 140 and change last year, right? So we ought to be at 142 or 3 this year, maybe. So the jump to 149 is 10,000 to keep up with the actuals, because the changes that we already made, they're not necessarily changes being made today.
Yep.
It's a good catch, it's a good question. Okay, repair and maintenance, electricity, we appreciate the success we've had. Keeping our rates down, fuel oil, obviously, there's some changes there because of the market. Okay, so there's, there's elementary. Now, if I stop before I leave elementary and just go back, if you look at page 9, having been through the detail lines, she lumps those into 2 different categories, and I know that she talked about that before. She lumps them first into functions, which are prescribed by Uncle Sam, or by the Department of Ed, at least. And then below that, the objects, we call them, which is salaries versus services versus supplies, and you get a sense of where the swings are. But the total building-based budget of the elementary is down 160,000, so. Based upon
But just-
everything we just heard about, but there's no teacher salary increases built in
Right.
there.
And the
That'll-
adjustments for
That'll
this,
come in the,
for the health insurance isn't in there either, so just keep that in mind.
oh, the new health
Yeah,
adjustment.
so all the new adjustments
Right,
that
which
I
we
gave you
just-
on that sheet is not updated in the booklet yet.
Which we just pegged at for the elementary, it's 50,000 and change.
Yeah,
So
so
that
just-
tempers some of that savings.
So just keep that in mind.
All right, then back to, having done that, go back to page 18 to start the junior, senior high, or the junior high. Now, some of this gets caught up in how she reallocated and realigned the breakdown between the two grade levels within the same building.
Right.
And this shows an increase of 150,000. It's going to be buoyed by another 20,000 in health insurance. But that's offset by a reduction at the high school level, even though that's all in the same building, so. So if I go to the
So
next.
Nate, let me just ask, so
Yep.
going forward, so when I do this next year, if I continue with that, then you'll be able to see the variances as they are in terms of how I budget. So asking if that's okay, or if you want me to go back to then, I can create a different spreadsheet for budgeting purposes so that you can kind of see more of a reflection in terms of the FTE to the dollar. Because what you asked, what caused you to ask for the staffing was because of how I budget, because how I report,
As long
and
as,
how I,
as long as your budget and actual gets consistent moving forward.
yeah, but
Then-
I just want to make sure because the FTEs
fine.
are all going to change too then.
Again, it's, pick a poison and stick with it.
Just want to
That's
make
fine.
sure
Yeah,
you're
as long
okay with
as-
it. Okay.
So page 19?
And this is where we're going to increase.
Half,
And-
half a 50% position for music, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that explains, because otherwise, other than that increase, this is just actualizing for the teachers reflected in that line. No raises, simply somebody left, somebody else that got hired was more or less expensive, and so this actualizes that. Page 20 then, as we move from regular ed through special ed.
And that new equipment, new furniture, that encompasses special ed for junior, senior high, or just,
This is just junior.
Am I reading this right? We budget 2,500 for an air conditioner? Is that what it? Or I'm looking at,
1,200, 730.
yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the narrative down below. It says an air conditioner.
Probably,
I don't remember where her office is.
her office is in the front, right next to behind Chris, in that little,
Oh.
where Chris O'Callahan used to be. I want to say, let me check. Just to make sure. I might have not put the full note in, so. You can move on. I'll get.
I'm just thinking, it's a nurse's station, is that air conditioned?
Normally.
Is it?
Normally, even if you have to duct it a bit, you know, because of the climate control in that space. And air, you know what I mean, air turn
Right.
to pull the sick out. As opposed to, you know, germs and airborne things. I don't know if it is in that room though, but
Chris's, so here it
it's
is.
20,
Okay.
what was it, 2130.
So there's some new equipment, but I don't have the full description. Only 500 is for an air conditioner. But there's some other pieces of equipment that they plan to purchase.
What is that?
I do not have the justification for it. But at least it makes me feel better that we're paying $2,500 for an air conditioner. So I can have that for you on Thursday.
Okay.
Okay.
Actually, what I'll do is I can email it to you ahead of time, just so that you'll have it.
In your narrative under 737,
Hold on one second, if you
Yep.
don't mind. Let me just make note. Okay, 737. Oh, redundant.
yep.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. So I'm on to 21. We'll move into the related services, the student services first of guidance, and then nursing. 2150 is the speech. And then you're in the library on page 22. This is another piece of the shifting to salaried versus para. No changes really on that page otherwise. 23. For me, I really appreciate the fact that we're budgeting into all of the lines of supplies and equipment, as opposed to budgeting everything under one $50,000 line of scholar supplies and then doing reallocations later and not being able to tie out year over year.
Yeah.
So this helps. 2,400, you move into school administration. Why is the salary secretary, oh, we have a new secretary?
There's, I'm not sure.
We have a changing staff, changes in secretarial staff at the junior, senior high?
We do.
We did?
Yep, we, our bookkeeper, we lost Elizabeth Valinsky.
So that's why there's a change in the actual, okay.
Yep.
On to page 24, we hit custodial.
Um,
Keep going, please,
yeah, I'm
catch it.
sorry. I just so I understand, on page 23, we have two replacement equipment. We have there's two entries there.
Placement furniture and equipment.
No, look at it, fourth item down, and then the second one from the bottom, are both the same.
739, 739, so it's,
Seven.
so one's for the office, one's for junior high, right?
2230, that function,
Yeah.
that is,
Is that the distinction?
yeah, that's a technology line.
Okay.
And so the equipment he's replacing in there is
I got you.
Oh, okay.
tech-related. Then down below would be whatever is specific to school
Okay.
administrators.
All right.
Which is, well, you just hit it, right? That's why back on the summary page, it's nice to go, hey, show me what you're doing in general with equipment. Or in aggregate, I should say. 24. We see again the oil and gas. Here you see a custodial salary increase that is maybe more related to simply step and track changes and not major staffing change.
Only one staffing change at the high school, as you all know.
I'm on to page 25. Some of the fact that the health insurance is ticking up is because we added half a position, picked up benefit costs on that half FTE. '26. Okay. I'm on to page 27, peekabooing at the summary on the high school. Can you just help with, if there are 28 regular ed teachers in instruction in the high school and 21.95 FTEs,
Yep. In terms of what they are?
is that
What are the
because you,
splits?
is that because you've broken out all the related arts and put them in
Yeah.
2 buildings?
Yep. So your art, your, here, I'll tell you exactly.
I mean, 0.95? What's the missing 5/100ths of a position?
That was the music, which was half and half, so 0.25 and 0.25. We have a halftime music.
Okay?
Hold on, don't move on, I'll get there.
Oh, 17.25 over there.
Okay, so we have a 0.4 health, we have a 0.8 physical education, we have a 0.2 physical education, a 0.35 music, a 0.8 art, a point.
Can't write that fast. He's writing this all down.
Oh, sorry.
0.4 health, 0.8,
PE, 0.2 PE,
0.35 music,
0.35 music, 0.8 art, 0.2 industrial tech, 0.4 consumer science, 0.6 French, 0.6 Spanish, and another 0.6 Spanish, which is why, for simplicity and reconciliation, we also have a 0.5, I want to say he's social studies,
Oh,
OTASH, but is now a new position. But and then we also had a 0.5 math at the time too.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I need to leave.
please.
My wife indicated to me this morning that my grandson's birthday does take precedent.
It does. It does for us as well.
Good.
Over equipment?
Yeah.
Over-
And just a quick update
Yeah.
for you folks. We're going to be interviewing 5 superintendent candidates tomorrow.
Excellent.
So we are here all day.
all
Unbelievable.
right, thank you.
And then some additional candidates on Monday and Wednesday, which should wrap up our, to have to you folks December 1st.
We better pick up some bagels on the way, because she's closed on Sunday.
Absolutely. I should,
Are they good? Are you talking
I
about
thought-
Kaylee's? Are they good? I always want to stop.
Best
I-
bagels ever.
I thought you were picking the bagels up and I
I'll
was
come
doing the.
Sunday.
co-
I will be more than happy to sit here through those interviews with you.
Go safely today.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Wendy,
Have
thank
fun.
you.
Enjoy.
Thank you, enjoy.
Thank you for the coffee and
Yes, thank
whatnot.
you.
Well, those coconut donuts were really good.
Good,
The
take a
butternut?
bite.
Is it butternut or
No,
coconut?
it's actually coconut.
Oh, is it
Yeah.
coconut?
Oh, I
Ooh,
know.
I'll have
It
to
is a
try.
coconut.
Sweet one.
Yeah, I'll swallow it.
I do have a question, though.
But I don't want to
Before I
talk.
do
I'll be
that.
like, whoa.
1100 430, instructional equipment repair. I know we did get new stoves, correct?
Agree.
On page 28.
4:30?
Yes.
Okay,
We did get new stoves this year?
we did.
All right, so then how old are the sewing machines? And that's basically, because we don't have to worry about the stoves, obviously, hopefully breaking down. They'd be under,
I can get there for you. I don't know how old the equipment is.
I just want to make sure we put enough in there, just to, if something goes, because the fact that we have so little, if one goes,
Yep.
it clogs up the system.
Well, then it would be a replacement equipment and not a repair.
Gotcha.
Who's teaching the VHS?
I don't know who the body is.
Do you mean the one class that we have?
Well, she has, we have a teacher who has to teach a class.
In favor.
It is
Okay,
Chris,
thank you.
okay.
I didn't want to say we're wrong
Yeah.
and give somebody the wrong credit.
Okay, then the other question, I'm just kicking back and forth now because I. what was the
Are
other thing
you?
I
Are we
saw?
done with the budget, or are we?
Nope.
Okay, so I'm just
So-
making sure I'm on track here.
Lauer. So right now, you said chorus, I've got .35. This is a full load. This is a half a load. This is, okay. I was going through that, the report from Chris, and there were a couple of, you have at least somewhere in the district right now, you have at least one instance of where you're paying for an extra section.
Yes, we have a stipend, yep.
That'll explain where that,
That's
okay.
per the teacher's contract.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, I'm back to page 28.
Okay, so.
Leaving regular ed on to 29, I'm looking at special ed. So, is that 25 on the paras, just scale movement?
Not all of it. A lot of it had to do with the changes in staff. We hired some new people they're at the top of the step.
Okay.
So it had to do with through attrition and all that.
Good. Moving through regular ed into, special ed, into extracurriculars in the 1400s on page 30. So, a couple other things I just wonder about. Our budget is down, and I appreciate that. For what it's worth, historically, it will cost more than what that 0.5% of savings looks like right now in the budget. It'll cost more than that to secure a teacher's warrant article.
Right.
So we're ending up in the positive increase here, not the negative overall. And so I simply want to find things that we can find where we can. So I wonder out loud, in the area of officials, we saved some dollars. Looks like we consistently spend just shy of 11, and that's only based on 2 years of actuals that we're looking at. But we're budgeting 15 and a half. There's some contingency and a room where you could make some minor reduction. I wouldn't want to cut more than a couple of grand, but you go to the line below it, which is our participation with other districts and a trainer. We're budgeting almost 25, and we're spending almost 10 lower than that consistently.
Okay.
And so I wonder, what's that contingency for, and could that pare back to 20? Between those couple of lines, you could pick up $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
So,
I would just add
By the
that
way, that's where you'd spend your $8,000 on ebooks if you ever decided to do it.
the 24.9 is coming from the athletic director based on our participation of our current year, because we pay $800 per student
So you were
to play in the football. So that's based on what he's projecting that is going to stay on the team for next year. And then the other two pieces are, one of them is contractual, the 4,500 is, and then the 4,000 is to support the hockey.
So if you go back and look at the
So-
actuals of 12 and 16, those didn't take into account the new rates we're paying for football or the hockey.
Correct.
All of that's buried in, and we'll see it in this year, 15,
You're
16.
going to see it in this year.
Okay.
and then if you could, 314, the officials?
And the officials, both the principal and the AD felt that they needed to level fund it because not all the programs were funded last year. Or I shouldn't say not the programs, but like we didn't have a junior varsity basketball.
Right.
So we didn't utilize the officials for every sport because we didn't fill all the programs. And so now with the increase in participation, they felt that you're going to see that this year and you're going to see it next year.
And I would throw out there that I'd love to see 3 officials on the soccer field, just so you know.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of injuries, and
Things that could be helped by having more refs on the
But
playing
we try to
surface.
be
All right.
very aggressive in scheduling and
yeah.
the officials and utilizing them when they're here with JV and varsity, so.
Oh, definitely.
On page 31, moving then into student services and then the related services, you got guidance, followed by nurse on page 32. Speech and language, library, we see again the librarian impact. Continuing 33 into, back, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just
Don't
a
be
little
sorry,
behind.
no.
32, on the travel and the conference, it's 580.
Cool.
How do we jump, the actual for 14, 15 was 5,000. Do we know in advance, or are we, precisely what?
No, the teacher's contract is, that's a contractual benefit in the
Okay.
teacher's contract,
Uh-huh.
that they get $400. And then what happens if they don't spend their $400 in May? I then publish what we have spent, and so then they then can get reimbursed additional monies that they have maybe paid out, because they exceeded the 400. Then at that point, after May, they can get reimbursed again. So that's just kind of a bookmark where we figure we budget for so many teachers at $400 just to give us, some to help with that liability.
Okay.
That's all that is. And I think you're going to start to see that go up now that we have some new blood coming in and whatnot.
Michael, if you look at the other actual, there's a big differential between 13-14 and
Right.
14-15, and I think that speaks to what Christine is saying, is that it just bounces.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
33 then?
And so when you say that could go up too, I'm thinking the people that would take the classes, we talked about that last year, how people don't take advantage of the offerings that, one of the benefits we have is that they can take
The
classes.
14-15 year you did. We saw
did.
a big difference in,
And
Yep.
again, with the new blood, we'll probably be seeing more of that.
yep, so last year we spent 16,000. So if you went to page 37, the very last number in page 37, the 292, we only budgeted 11 and we spent 16,900. So you're starting to see that with the courses as well. So I'd just be a little conservative to trend down until we can get a couple years with some of the new staff and, but that one we cannot change. That one is contractual that we have to put 33,000 in the budget.
Page 33. Continuing through the technology portion. Moving on to page 34 and the school administration 2400 function.
And we looked at maybe increasing the graduation supplies. And when you see that replacement equipment and you see a negative, that means that we're repurposing equipment? That probably-
Not necessarily that they may be doing other, it was just reallocated somewhere else for the most part because it's a level funded. So they, instead of doing replacement equipment, one of the things that they really wanted to do was get some new furniture that Chris mentioned. So it's just reallocating the use of those funds elsewhere. Because remember, what used to happen is we had that scholar supplies, that one number,
Yep.
and then it would get dispersed everywhere. Well, now we've put everything in the lines, but so what you're going to start seeing throughout the budget process now is you're going to start seeing some of those ins and outs going, because one year may be equipment, the next year it's going to be furniture, the following year may be textbooks. So you're just going to see the changes.
Hey, Christine, for Walmart pricing here for optics,
Where are you?
I'm just in my head.
Oh, okay.
It's a dangerous place. In the budget, way back in the beginning, you've got the approved budget for the current year at 16,145,000. That's not the budget, that's not the warrant article.
The more articles in there.
Yeah, but that, right, no, I guess, I mean, 16,145 is not the operating warrant number.
No, it was
You gotta-
15,952,
you gotta throw in-
15,950, 593.
Okay, but you still gotta throw in the gross, you got gross appropriations for federal funds and food service.
I
and-
still have to do that,
So
yep.
that number's, okay.
Yep.
So on 34, then, moving graduation assemblies, we have to talk about that at some point, although in the absence of any real information, I think one of the things that what we could do, I guess, as a commitment is say that we'd like to see if we can't, in 15-16, support that out of unused funds elsewhere. In 16-17, whether we budget the number differently or not, we try to do the same thing. And in this process, figure out what we need to do so that the 17-18 budget that we'll build next year we'll have a different number here. Because I don't know if this whole process is going to slow down or stop for them to figure out exactly how much they spend. You know what I mean? And I want
Right.
to,
I think that's the appropriate way to handle it,
yeah, just
because we want to be able to help them as soon as possible.
as soon as possible.
And as the
It's
classes get
expensive.
bigger,
It's going to be more.
we're actually going to run into, there's not going to be enough room in the gym.
Well, I can imagine, right?
Yeah.
You're going to, if we're not outside under tents, we're,
And you can't be outside in the tent because it's during baseball season and they don't want the fields ruined. So we are actually staring down the barrel once again. So if we start the conversation now, we can prepare ourselves for further down the.
we seriously need to grow grass on that space across the way.
And
no?
carpenters.
It's nice and level.
I was in the gym last year, it was, there was enough space.
Yeah, we only
Right.
graduated
We
at
had
49.
Yeah. Now you're looking at
seen it
99.
stuffed?
I don't know about you, but I was hot.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and you think about it, Mike, where you were standing.
Well, you're having more parents. You
yeah,
get two for every
more
Like
one
it
kid.
outside.
Your
You-
fanny's right up against a student.
I just thought there was a tradition of being inside here.
No, we actually started doing it probably 5 years ago. We used to try to do outside, but
Okay.
again, the fields were getting ruined
Yep,
because we utilize the fields more.
yep.
But Chris could probably answer that far better than I could.
Flipping to 35 and custodial and building. That change is related to replacing a veteran custodian with a newer one.
Now, Christine, this packet that we have about, and I'm sorry to just jump in, Nate, but
Oh, please.
in the heating system repair, this packet you gave us, is that for the PM contracts?
No, it's not. I would say that the proposal that you have, that I just gave you, is just for informational purposes. We do have a PM maintenance contract, but it's not that number that I gave you.
So that's not included in this number.
No, there's about, I'd say, $7,000 or $8,000
I-
delta there.
The P and M contracts that we're also getting a second round of, I think the revenue, the money for those would come out of the trust fund. Which is,
You're talking about the repair and maintenance one?
yes.
Wait, I mean, we're talking about tacking on an annual contract, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I
But I
mean-
mean, I think, there's
My
a $250,000
My
there.
hope is it's not going to be significantly larger than what we're already paying, because we should be under contract now. You know,
Yeah,
with
but it's
regular
only
PM.
like a $7,000 contract.
So they're really not doing anything, is what we're going to find.
No,
That's
no,
what-
I
They're
thi- I
doing
think-
some, but it's not a full-blown PM, which I've been trying to implement.
Yeah.
So what I gave you is, we got, 2 years ago, I got Siemens on for the elementary, which is why we did the control systems, because they came in and they did an efficiency audit for us that said, if you need to look at these controls, you need to be able to do this, and this is what your savings is gonna be, and it pays for itself. Well, we were able to implement that. So we are under contract with Siemens at the elementary. We had a contract with Eckhart and Johnson, and we still are currently in a contract with them. It's not the same level as what we currently have at the elementary, but there was some resistance to making that change at the time. So I had just given you a proposal that I had back from 2 years ago. I asked him to revise it and to update it and resubmit it, because when I heard that you were looking at a PM for the junior, senior high school, I wanted you to have that, because their Johnson controls are actually, that Johnson controls is the proposal I gave you, but they're also the controls that we have in the building. So there's some additional benefit by having the people who have the controls in the system in the building as well. There's some benefits. So that's all that was there for, was just strictly for informational purposes.
So there was some discussion at some point in time about, was Johnson Controls, did their services extend to preventative
Yes.
maintenance?
I call them like the one-stop shop, and there's other vendors that are similar. They do security systems, they do fire, they do HVAC, they do boilers, they can do all of that. So, and Siemens has some of those abilities as well. Honeywell's another one.
I thought Siemens just did the controls, they didn't do the actual maintenance.
They do the controls in our boiler.
They do?
Yep,
So they break down a sectional boiler,
yep.
replace a section?
So they do all the, I can't speak, I don't want to misspeak about it, but the contract does cover the boiler in our HVAC control units. They come in and do services and all that on it, cleanings and.
Can you remind me why we might have more than one vendor for this?
So the Johnson controls are probably at least 7 years old, if not older. And so that's pre my time, so I can't speak to it there. But we had some we had some heating issues at the elementary where one room would be 90 degrees, the other room would be 60 degrees. And so what Brian, the head custodian, would have to do, he'd literally have to go room to room and make adjustments. And so what we did was, because it wasn't an automated system, we did an automated system 2 years ago.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand, so why two vendors? Why wouldn't Johnson Controls have done that?
They bid.
It was a bidding process?
It was a bidding process, yep, and Siemens was selected to do that, to do the project. And so the service contract was then tacked on to that. So we have a whole new automated system. It's all run at the computer level. We can do scheduling and things of that nature. So it's some of the reasons why you're seeing some of the savings in electricity and fuel is because we have that automated system as well.
Literally, one room would be 95, and the other one would be 40.
You'd have windows open in the winter, so.
But
And
then-
it took Brian a lot of time to go constantly throughout the building because we also didn't have any shut-off valves. We only had one on the entire line of that elementary school. So they also went in and they made shut-off valves so that we could shut off certain parts of the wings, and then bleed the lines and so forth.
And so, I don't know how much we spent, but we spent significant dollars, how many years ago, 3 years ago, or two?
We spent about, I think it was 90,000, 99
And
from
we
it.
did, okay, so are they under contract right now? I mean, we must probably.
Yep.
They're under contract now to maintain that system.
Yep.
Software upgrades, annual preventive maintenance, testing of but that doesn't include,
And then we have a separate service contract with them.
for,
For the boilers and for all the other HVAC, the cleanings, the ducts,
that's at the elementary school.
yep.
And we have a contract similar to that at the high school with,
It's not, I personally would say it's not an apples-to-apples comparison that Eckhart and Johnson does for us at the high school. But we do have one where they come in and do an annual inspection and cleaning, PM contract.
we don't have to belabor it tonight. I think that the analysis you guys are doing,
It's not to the extent of the contract that you have all in front of you, or to the contract that we have with Siemens right now.
we're burning oil, not gas. Oil's not as efficient. There's sulfur residue, there's, deposits. Those puppies should be cracked open, scraped down, vacuumed out every year. So,
That stuff is getting done, like the basics.
yeah, I mean, I'm
That gets
hoping that
done.
that's getting done. I think that's part of the conversation that we're looking to have, because when, again, I don't mean to belabor that, but these things sit in schools, they go 40, 50 years. There's no reason why a boiler at 17 years, somebody ought to be saying, well, the nodules are dry and this thing has to be replaced and it's just a bad unit, let's get rid of it. When the only reason that could be the case is something that either should be covered under warranty by manufacturer or somebody's not minding their P's and Q's and taking care of that thing on an annual basis.
I think,
So
and I think that's what Al's gonna,
that's where I think he's been chasing it. He's absolutely right. We can't, we've had conversation, community members come to the microphone and say, it's time to get a new boiler. Well, and I understand we had a boiler day. The reality is, if our service contract is good and our PM is good, you might still have a day when there's a problem with a boiler and a sectional can't be obtained and in place fast enough. What we're missing is not necessarily a new boiler, we're missing redundancy. We don't have a secondary
Right.
boiler that kicks in, and that's part of
Right.
where we can chase, so.
and that's one of the things, that one boiler controls that whole entire building, and you've added on to that building how many times?
And if it's down, it gets bloody cold. And this, you could do some smaller you could do some smaller ones that could modulate, at least to keep the pipes from freezing. It may not be warm enough to keep all the, keep classes going during the day, but I want to be supportive of any process to help us continue to swing
Yes.
at that, so.
You're going to have some information on,
That's coming.
on Parma and Sagard. I guess, Nathan, in the back of my mind, I I felt that there's maybe some work that needs to be done prior to the annual maintenance contract, which I thought the trust fund was helpful.
Good.
Besides that, when we talked about, when we added $100,000 to the trust fund last year, it's my sense we were going to use that.
We're going to chase that boiler issue.
We're going to chase the boiler issue with
I hear
that
you.
money. So I think we're okay with the budget, and I think we're okay to fix it with the trust fund.
It's true, we did, when we made that a priority, and we didn't put money into other trusts. Okay, I'm 35, moving into transportation and benefits on 36. That wraps up the high school on 37. All right, we just did this on Thursday, but let's go into the budget summary of the SAU and the district-wide services on page 1. There's no regular ed in that cost center, but we do start with special ed because this is where our district-wide special ed is. The first big account there is extended year salaries. That's our summer school. There's no proposed change to that budget. Contracted services, these are our professional services staff not currently in the building, meaning beyond the staffing that we currently have on payroll, this might be psychologists, OTs, PTs, audiology,
Behavior specialist.
behaviorists, behavior specialists, yep. I was thinking applied, ABA, applied behavior all of the like.
I did have some questions.
Questions, please.
Of course I did. Mike, how is that building coordinator working, just having the one? That was my big question. So I,
Superintendent just stepped away, but.
yep. So that would be a good question
That's a question to,
to
yep.
answer. I'd like to know how well that's working between the two buildings, having just one.
So it's clear, I'm not sure what has happened with regard to the special ed, the identified services being provided, or the special services being provided under IEP to the student attending the charter school,
Right.
but that number seems to have dropped off significantly.
He's no longer attending.
And so we've left the 7,500 as a placeholder against the possibility?
We had a couple there. We had a couple at
We did
chart.
have a couple?
Yep.
Okay.
So we lost one, so.
We've now made, if I make it all the way to page 40, we've made an adjustment to the curriculum instruction line, made that 92, again, in the absence of anything else to work with.
Right.
Michael, we've had a question, as we started into the SAU budget, we got to the special ed realm. One of the questions that pops up, or that we've wondered is, how are we doing with the existing model where there's a building coordinator who is attempting to bounce back and forth between the two buildings? Any sense?
I don't think it's, I think maybe the span of the job is, meaning that they are responsible for kids K through 12, is not ideal. They're doing business, there's two kinds of groups of kids. Kids that are in the process of getting coded in special ed, and then as your kids move through the system, kids that get placed out of district. And those are two highly specialized kinds of functions, and they're the big decision points made for kids in the IEP process. When you have to do business with parents and talk to them about their child, and you're concerned about their performance or their growth. And then you have to talk to parents about their kids are not learning, and maybe this isn't the right place. That's tough stuff. That is difficult stuff for parents to have to do business with. And as a result, I think that would require, and this person who's the coordinator has to do both of those. And it's sort of a little bit like music, you have your instrumentalists who are music teachers and your choral music teachers. I think those are two very different kinds of things. And those, some of the primary responsibilities, not to mention the operation, the daily teaching, learning stuff.
So we made the I wasn't here for that, but we cut the other building coordinator as a budgetary effort. Was there a significant downturn, do you remember, in caseloads? Like or were we simply looking for a place to find savings?
I think we were looking to find savings, and we were hoping that it would work, but
So you've
perhaps
got,
it's just.
so we've got identified students in both buildings, we've got case managers in both buildings, who I'm sure are being supported by principals and assistant principals, but building coordinators jumping back and forth as the LEA rep, sitting in on these IEP meetings and trying to make these. And then at the central office level, at the district level, we've got somebody working as an administrator, maybe chasing more of the out-of-district placement, tuition, helping with contracting and due process when it arrives.
There's a lot of work in out-of-district work after you place the child.
Right.
After you place the child. There's a ton of work there, managing the systems, coordinating transportation, or, placing the child.
None of the other staff that are in here are working in that realm, right? Not the transition coordinator that we have, or we call it a transition coordinator? Is that what we call it? Transition,
We have a transition coordinator.
right, that person's not working in the special ed area, that's all.
Doesn't she kind of help?
I don't want to
Place-
comment on that. I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe we should.
We might want to talk, and I think this is, a presentation from staff at some point about student services. Talk to us about the resources that we have, transition, guidance,
Caseload.
caseloads, case managers. Talk about how we're serving students and what the positions are and how they're playing out is something that I think we might benefit from, not necessarily with regard to this budget, but just that's some of those informative things that I think that the board benefits from when they get to know what we're actually doing in the schools and why. That way, when somebody says, hey, we really need 2 building coordinators, or, hey, we can make a change, we have some grounded sense of why.
I think if you look at the special ed chunk of the budget, it's a substantial chunk.
It
And I
is.
think we need to make sure that that chunk is being spent well and that the children and their families are receiving the support that they need.
It's true.
So,
And it's the hardest one for us to know anything about, because so often it's, well, that's
Right.
federally mandated, well, that's confidential, I can't tell you, but I think to the extent that they can,
Right.
we need to have them educate us about what are we doing. These are, like you said, these are some big numbers, and the assumption is good and prudent staff are working with parents and the entire IEP team in each case and making the right decision about where to place these kids. Not for us to decide that they are or not placed appropriately, but it'd be nice to know what the resources are that go into that process on our behalf.
and I think Mike hit on a good point of the amount that goes into all this stuff emotionally, all sorts of things. Maybe we need an individual in each building that is the go-to person for those case managers
Right.
to help them address those things. And I think.
Not to mention a little professional, clinical supervision kind of,
Yes,
help.
yes,
Just,
yes.
helping with the case itself, but also
Yes.
helping with managing the manager. I
Right.
mean, I worry that that's something that's really missing, because it's not necessarily something that a building principal without special ed experience, it's hard maybe to, it's kind of like just walking in as an engineer and trying to help your counselor feel better about the
Right.
day they've had.
We also have two,
who's
we also
doing
have
that?
2 stipends, one in each building that is giving to an
To a
employee.
case manager?
To somebody, I believe it's a case manager, to help with that, so that when
As an
the
LEA.
coordinator is not in the building, yes, they
They're
help
sort
with
of a
LEAs,
lead.
they help, yes, so we have 2 of those that are stipends that are going out.
Okay.
One in each building as well, so.
Okay.
So they should be at this meeting when there's an LEA need? if we can't get the building coordinator, that person should, if the director can't be there, then
I
that.
don't know what their responsibilities are. I don't want to comment and be
Yes. That's a lot of
misspeak,
questions.
but I think that's a question that you
I-
might want to ask the director.
Correct.
I do feel there's a good working relationship between the building coordinator and the two principals.
Oh, I
Oh, I'm sure
absolutely
there,
agree.
there would have to be, or
Yeah.
we'd have heard probably a lot more by now. Okay, if I keep clipping, then we're into the area of technology. I didn't want to ask the question when Jason was sitting here the other night, but I'm curious, when we got rid of the webmaster and that stipended position, and Jason and Chris picked it up, was there any wage or salary
Yep.
impact to them?
It was
There was
split.
last year.
It was shared with them?
The 3,000 was split.
Okay. So as we move forward and take that out of the budget,
It just got repurposed.
are they seeing a continuous salary increase as a result?
Right, but
It'll be part of their overall salary, so whenever that pool of money that is divided,
Yep.
it'll be on
we
part
still
of it, because
have,
it's part of their job description now as well.
we still have technical contracted support for
Right.
4,000, and so we are,
That's
For services
outside,
we might
that's
need.
outside services.
right, but
Yep.
but Jason has talked about if they needed the original webmaster to.
This project or that project, they can call on her
Right,
for some help
right,
at a rate.
right.
Yep.
Yep.
Good, okay.
So that contract support is just in case, it's there just in case they need it.
Yeah,
So they have
the
questions.
webmaster was doing a couple things. It was setting up a new website,
Yeah.
and then the webmaster was posting content onto the webpage, and we've shifted the posting primarily to Jason and Chris Cooney, and they can do some setup within the defined parameters, but we changed, I think, to a Google web page kind of design, and their department is shifting a little bit more from building to operations, because they've gone through a major building piece,
Yes.
adding all kinds of wireless and devices, and now it's shifting. So I think this is a good decision, and we frankly sometimes have needs to get stuff posted quicker. And when you have to call to an outside person to post something, that was holding stuff up. It was frustrating to folks. I think we're in a good place.
Okay. Clipping then from 41 into 42, the remainder of technology moving into the school board realm. Board salaries, the treasurer, the clerk, et cetera, moving into 43. These are school board costs related to our legal, audit. Remember, we're responsible for advertising to fill vacancies in our district, et cetera. And then 2320, we move into the superintendent.
So the SAU custodian, do we contract that out? Are we working with the town on that? Is that something else we could, I mean, that's one building.
Here again, I think is something, we've got dollars in the budget, which is good, but moving forward, I know that when we've asked the question before, one of the answers was, even though we're in one community and one building, there was a sense or a concern about confidentiality, among other things, and who do you want walking through the, excuse me, the offices of the superintendent, the special ed director, and the like?
Okay.
And so,
That makes sense.
but I think that's something we can talk about.
Because everything's under lock and key.
It's a stipend
Right.
position as well, whereas in previous years, we paid hourly.
Yeah.
And we weren't clearly getting the cleaning that we needed. Things weren't getting vacuumed, things weren't getting picked up. And so what we did was we offered a stipend, because we did go out to bid at one point with the town. Then that fell through. They went out and seeked somebody else. But the hours wouldn't work for us. The pay was a big difference. And so we chose to do something in-house to be a little conservative. And then, like Nate said, the confidentiality was a key. Plus the times that they were coming, weren't conclusive for us either. So, but that's something that we said that we'd explore again with the town. And I think they're even in the process of still doing that again, because I think their person is, it wasn't, the person that they currently have now couldn't take on the school if they wanted to, because they have a full-time job, and this is something that he does in the morning prior to going to that job. And he has the police and all the other public works buildings, and so he couldn't take on more.
When
So,
you say stipend, you mean somebody in our staff?
in the district, yep. Yep. Similar to like advisor salary stipends that we do and team
Yeah.
leaders that we do, same thing.
I didn't realize that.
Okay, I want to make sure the board knows in case there are questions that are asked. This next line. If you went, if you read the narrative down below, under 370, it lists for you all of the individuals for whom salary increases come from this line. If you go back and you look at each of those lines, there are increases in those lines. Those increases reflect how the budget, how that dollar amount was reallocated to those lines for this year, right? So the increases that you see on each line are what it takes to correct the budget for what they're making now. This line then holds the same dollar amount again to be divvied up and added to their salaries for 16-17. So instead of actually budgeting for their increase in their line, like we do for all of the other positions, the previous administration came to the conclusion that it was best to identify all of those who would be impacted here, and then put a dollar amount there, which is an arbitrary number now, because I don't think it dials back to anything particular. Once upon a time, it was roughly calculated at, I think it was something like 3% of the pool. I think it's less than 3% of the total pool of
Yep.
salaries now.
Yep.
But for whatever reason, we just keep using that same number.
Because
And-
we haven't increased it.
Because it hasn't changed.
We haven't increased
It hasn't
it.
changed in the last, at least 3
It's
years.
based on merit.
So it's all about performance evaluations having been completed, and we sat with some of that process this last year, but I just wanted to draw our attention to that's, I've never been in love with the label, the description that's put on it. But, and we could change it if we wanted, but,
That's what we can start doing. Like, these are things that the
Right.
board should be working on.
yeah, we could stay mindful of this and work on these.
Yes.
And if we weren't in a facilities mode 24 hours a day, every year for 10 years,
20.
these are the things that, 20 years, these are the things that would stay on the radar and we would tackle having conversations about this, so. Anyway, if I continue through page 44, 45. Transportation going down.
And then 26,520. That was the property management. Might go up, right? Correct?
26,520 is our property and liability insurance, and that's going up. But we're gonna stick an account in there
Okay.
and put in the property management, yeah.
The 50,000,
She'll
which
add
is
an-
on
she'll
your
add an
adjustment
account.
sheet.
Do you
All right.
Do you have a job description
No,
for that person?
well, I do, yeah.
You ought to draft something.
Not for here, but I mean, yeah, I've got one as a starting point. Yep. Let's do that, okay.
Hey, could you send that to me, too?
Yeah.
'Cause yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's not tailored to,
Right.
it hasn't taken in
Generic.
this nuance, it's a generic one, but
Yeah.
I've got something as a starting point, yeah.
Okay, great.
I think we need some, if we're gonna do this, we need to have some sort of.
We need to be able to show something to people that ask the question. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I will, I'll send that out. Matter of fact, I might be able to send out 3 of them for the value of that, 2 at least, so.
It's always good to plagiarize that stuff.
Exactly, yeah, let's not reinvent the wheel. All right, 46, and we're out. So, that may have been, I hope that wasn't wasted time, I just thought it was,
No,
it was good to see it one more time,
It's good to see this stuff at the beginning portion of the day.
Yes. Well, and it takes a while to understand it.
Okay, so our adopted budget right now,
16,062,526.
16,145,003 is 1516.
Yep. I'm saying yes without looking at it, but that sounds about right.
16,145,003. Less the proposed 16,062,526.
Yeah, the difference is 109,903. You want to know what the tax rate is?
No.
Okay.
All right, so we've reduced the budget $82,477.
Yep.
Our proposed budget would be down 82. So if our teacher warrant article cost 182,000, we'd be a net up 100 grand. That's not, I'm just picking that number
Yeah.
for illustrative purposes, right? That's. Anything else, folks, think about that budget?
So let's just talk about the process and
Yep.
going forward. The board is going to consider the budget on Thursday night.
So between now and then, you're gonna redo that
Yep, I'm going to redo that.
and make that available to the board so we can do a final review on our own.
So I'm gonna put another sheet, I'm gonna add a sheet that will talk about the food service, that will talk about the grants, that will talk about the general fund, that number you just talked about, which is the overall operating budget, because that's the number that you will approve, which will get moved on to the budget committee after next week. After you vote on Thursday, then I revise it in case there's any other changes, and then I submit that to the budget committee, and we get moving with the budget committee.
Now, the second thing that we're gonna do in the budget process is, at the first meeting in December, we're gonna have to talk about warrant articles.
Yep, we'll start talking about warrant articles.
And then,
I mean, we can do that next Thursday. We can start, we already know now we've got 3. You got the operating budget, you got a teacher's collective bargaining agreement, and then you have, I don't know if you want to call it an A&E, a bond, whatever your other article is. You're probably gonna have some trust funds and so forth.
So, back to that conversation. We're talking about a bond, if we're talking about a number anywhere close to what we're, I think, right? Because even if we're talking 850, 900, if we were talking a number that low, that's still more than $1 on the bill. It's a one-time buck. But that might be more, I mean, I say might. That feels right now like more of a tax hit than we want to have. So we're talking about maybe a number, anywhere in that range we were talking about on Thursday night. One of the things that I think we need to figure out is by what process do we want to, how do we want to arrive quickly at what we're asking for? Is that a 5-year bond?
well,
10-year bond?
I thought the starting point was to get some indication from Ingrid.
We can get lots of indication, but whether it's 800, 900, $1.4 million, it doesn't matter, you're still gonna have to bond for it.
Well, it depends on how deep you go into your work level, Nathan. And I don't want to get into a. When I did a $20 million project, and I hate to talk about previous
But
experience.
we're not gonna do this with 100 grand. She's
Okay.
not- I don't think, she's not gonna eat the entire architectural engineering project on a hope that she gets the project and do $1 million worth of work for nothing, is she?
Well, I guess when you're talking 1.7, you're talking about a roll of
Plans.
plans this big and a spec book this big.
Right.
And where I've come from before, all you were doing was a project budget.
Yeah, but she's already committed to do that for 25 grand between now and March. We're just not gonna be ready for it.
Okay.
right?
I think they're a little different
They're-
than how you're explaining it, but that's fine.
No, that's fine, maybe, all right. I mean, if you,
But I thought we had the conversation the other night that we were gonna start with Ingrid and get some numbers. And maybe she can lay out 3 or 4 sets of numbers. Here's this level of detail, here's this level of detail.
Okay.
Here's this level of detail. And then, once you agree to that level of detail, then you can decide whether or not it's a bond issue or not a bond issue, and what the warrant article would be. I thought that's what we're doing. Maybe I've got it wrong.
no, every time we talk about money, anyway, we seem to be unwilling to take certain things at face value, and I appreciate that. We're in a community and a time right now where you can't make any assumptions, you can't make any assertions, you can't make any really intuitive, and I appreciate that for some they're leaps, but I will be very hopeful that because we delay the conversation by another 2 or 3, 4 weeks or whatever it is, that at least one of the alternatives that Ingrid does gets us to a 17 vote like we talked about with plans, and it's somewhere less than a couple $100,000 so that we can just appropriate it and not bond for it. Because if we are so convinced that that possibility is on the horizon, that we can't talk about alternatives, then I really hope she brings it forward and that our intuition was correct.
Well,
Because all I'm trying to do is stitch in time, right? I mean, anyway, okay, so that's good, so we're gonna wait
do you want
and
me
see
to
what.
contact Ingrid on that, or do you want that to go?
Mike's guy.
I'll touch base with her.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so we won't worry about the warrant until after Thanksgiving,
I do want to go to non-public.
okay.
Based on-
Anything else for this meeting?
No, that was helpful, thank you.
Oh, that's great, I appreciate everybody being here on a Saturday morning.
Yep.
So we're going in on a,
Non-public, RSA 91-A, Michelin 3,
Am I?
Yeah.
is
I
it
am.
personnel?
yes,
A,
I'll take care of
section A, 3A.
yes.
I was gonna go up and work on the
I have
budget.
a motion from Ms.
Okay.
McKinney, I need a
I was
second.
gonna go make all the changes.
Okay, well, go do that.
Dennison, on a roll call vote, Ms. Shelton,
Aye.
Mr. Kennison,
Aye.
Ms. McKinney,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, 4-0. We go in at 10:57.
Are we off the air?
Not yet.